Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. I was talking about this in my last video, and I thought, I'd open up a bigger video session to discuss this a little bit more. And I think this may have stemmed from a tweet that Summit1G, the streamer, put out there. And I think he said something about, he's starting to get burned out with the division and all of that stuff. And the PvP was not really satisfactory to him. And, another agent in the division community from the Division 1, I will say more of a Division 1 agent, commented and said, this is on Twitter, should somebody tell him that, the division, the PvP in the division is not really that good or whatever. And, I made a smart comment, me, smart Alec. Anytime I can throw a little jab at PvP in the division, I do it. I know my PvP, friends, you guys are not too fond of it, but, just let me have my, let's let me have this one. Okay, come on. Because I get called PVER all the time, so it's okay for me to throw a jab once in a while at PvP. And I know, just give me this one, okay? Thank you, appreciate it. Anyways, I made a very smart comment saying, I've tried to tell people that the Division 2 doesn't have a big PvP focus, but at the times I was saying that a long time ago, I usually got yelled at, and people would tell me that I don't play the PvP, so I needed to shut up. And so this agent went ahead and said, well, even the PvE in the division is actually the worst experience that they've actually, played. And, immediately that was said, something in me arose, and that was, the Inquisition, and that's one thing about me. Whenever somebody makes a claim, sometimes I want to refute the claim, but what I try my best to do is I ask questions, because there may be something that I don't know, that I'm trying to find out. So I went ahead and said, let me find out why, somebody will say that the Division 2's PvE is actually the worst experience that they've ever played. Now, if you go on my tweets or whatever, you'll probably see the conversation. But what was really interesting was this agent is a Division 1 veteran, has a lot of hours, actually an Ubisoft star player at one time, and has their name on the wall of the division. Ooh. So they really were in the division, community for the very first game and were very involved, but the Division 2 never really resonated with them. Now, I have to say something about this quickly. Now, I don't know Summit1G. I haven't really watched a lot of his streams. He's played the division off and on, and basically played other games. So here's the thing. When it comes to streamers and a lot of games like this, I don't necessarily think that games like this are fitting into a lot of streamers' business models. And let me kind of explain myself. Now, I'm not talking about our streamers in the division community, because our streamers within the division community are a hybrid model, or they started out as division streamers and have either added other things in going. And I'll give you guys kind of the categories that I feel that they're in. So if you look at, say, division content creators that make content and stream, they are different from, say, much more mainstream streamers. And this is a weird comparison, but I'll try to make it. So someone like GC Rock in our community that streams pretty much every minute you turn on YouTube, he is not a mainstream streamer. He's a division community content creator streamer. So he streams the division and also covers the division content. And yes, he also streams maybe Outriders and Destiny from time to time. But his core, we know him from the division. That is what he does. And he's a huge member of this community. Unlike, say, Summit1G, who will stream whichever games he feels like he wants to stream, or a game that may be, in a sense, beneficial for his growth and exposure, which is nothing wrong with that. But like I said, there seems to be an incompatibility with the division and a lot of, say, streamers along the lines of Summit1G. And so for him to be kind of wary about the PvP in the game, I don't know necessarily if I want to say that his motivations are purely from an enjoyment perspective. Don't let anybody fool you. All of us that are making content, we're doing it because, one, we like the content. Yes. Two, there's a financial benefit to it. So even if I'll tell you, yeah, the money is not necessarily the major factor, it doesn't mean that is not a factor, okay? Let's not fool ourselves. Y'all are grown adults in this community, so I'm not going to try to BS anybody. So, which is really interesting, because if you have a different motive for the way you're actually playing your games, then I can see how the division could wear you out on maybe the PvP side or even the PvE side. So that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing is I usually get to experience and witness this attitude, from a lot of Division 1 veteran players about the Division 2. And many times they dismiss the entire whole game because there is an aspect of the game that they don't necessarily like. Now, this is just, more of pointing out anything. I'm not trying to call anybody out, please. I'm not in the mood to fight. If I was, I would tell you guys. You guys know in the comment section, y'all know I don't hold back punches. When people throw punches, sometimes I either weave or sometimes I counter smack, whatever it is. And it's all fun and games, by the way. Many of you, if you know my upbringings, you'll know trolling was part of how I grew up. Some people try to troll me. I just laugh at them saying, you got to be really trained to do this kind of thing with me. But I want to go ahead and just highlight this because I believe that sometimes it is a little unfair that when these categorizations are made, that you can necessarily not get exactly why the categorizations are made within the division. And so when people make the comment that a division PVE is not good, I have to wonder why, when in reality, anybody will tell you, even the PvP players for the most part, will tell you that yes, the division's PvE is great, but the PvP is bad. But they also understand that there is kind of a cross effect that you can still at least keep some separation between both of them and still make a respectable argument as to why you see strengths and weaknesses. But to throw away all of the parts because of all of the whole because of one part that you don't like, to me, I see that as unfair criticism and kind of a criticism that doesn't really get things resolved. Because if we go back and look at the way the Division 1 actually did thrive, it thrived on a way where agents were able to pinpoint a lot of the pain points on the game and at least were able to effect change in those pain points because they were specific enough to highlight them. Compared to the Division 2, I think I seem to have noticed that a lot of the things that have been, pointed at seem to be, in a weird sense, kind of a general, sense of things. It's as if a lot of agents, kind of forgot that when they made the Division 1, you could at least point out a lot of these things and say because it was a new game, but then they failed to realize that the Division 2 is kind of a new game in its own self. Now, what do I mean? Am I saying that a sequel is a new game to a game that already, to a game that came out in 2016? Well, here's the deal. The Division 2 and the Division 1 obviously have two very different creative directions, and it's not necessarily a coincidence. In fact, the developer in the Division 1, yes, and the developer for Division 2 being the same, happen to have used two different creative directors to be able to ship both games. And what do I mean? And I've said this in past videos before. The Division 1, the creative director at the helm of the wheel is somebody named Magnus Jensen. The moment that he shipped the Division 1, I think 2 weeks later, Massive put a team to start working on the Division 2, which was then shipped by Julian Garrity, who was the associate director of the Division 1. As it stands, Magnus Jensen has now moved on to Avatar. So you're looking at two different, game developers or creative directors that have two different mindsets and perspectives on how they wanted to deliver the Division game. In my opinion, I genuinely believe that what you're seeing is as a result of them giving the freedom and the leeway to make the games the way they felt they wanted the games to be made. So if you don't exercise or point out that nuance, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're mad at the game in the wrong way. I don't know how else to say it. So yes, maybe you could be mad at Julian or mad at, Magnus or someone for not using or copying the framework directly from the first game. But it doesn't mean that the second game has no merit to it. I don't know if I'm just basically talking nonsense or if anybody understands what I'm trying to say. Let me give you an example. How am I going to do this? Oh, okay, good. This person makes you breakfast, right? And their sous chef pretty much makes a portion of the breakfast for you. You enjoy the breakfast so much, you say, okay, I want you guys to come on and, make me breakfast again. But it's like, well, the chef himself is now doing something else. Let the sous chef now come into the play and make me that breakfast. And then they make you the same, kind of breakfast. But you cannot tell me that both dishes are going to taste the exact same. The creative direction, especially this, kind of the freedom that's given, allowed for the Division 2 to follow its own path and expand on it. And I think that's what's basically behooved a lot of us here in the community for the longest time. And even though it may be hard to take off that lens of the Division 1 from time to time, I think that's essentially what's going to happen, because you really have to judge this game, differently. It's not like many other games where in most cases, the same creative director will see the visions through. Now, example will be Hideo Kojima and the Metal Gear series. Hideo Kojima was at the helm of Metal Gear forever until, MGSV, where sometime in there, he left Konami and all of the above. So that's a very important aspect. Say another franchise like Mortal Kombat, Ed Boon, and even some of the top leads at NetherRealms, they've also been at the helm of the creative direction of those games. Now, yes, you've seen different variations of, the game, how the game moved from place to place. But that's also because even though Ed Boon may have been the head, he's also been relegating over time a lot of the decision making to people who've been seasoned in the studio. So yes, Mortal Kombat 10 and Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat community will tell you that from MK9 to MKX to MK11, there have been a lot of changes, but those changes are not coincidental. Those are changes based on new chefs taking on the recipe, modifying the recipe to try to at least show their creativity and put it out there. I think this is the Division 2. If you judge the Division 2 based on that criteria, what you're going to come out with might be a result that is antithetical to perhaps a lot of what a lot of people are saying here in the community, which is Division 2 is bad. Division 2 bad. Division 2 bad. That's actually not necessarily the case. Now, yes, it's got the Ubisoft stamp and logo on it, for sure. I mean, that's who's providing the money for the development. But at the end of the day, you have to judge the Division 2 and the Division 1 separately, because at the helm of the creative direction, at the helm of the game design, are different people. In fact, if we even take it down, say a few steps, down, you're going to find out that yes, there are some similar strands. Example will be your lead 3 designers, your AI designers that actually did work on the Division 1, like Drew and Frederick Thailander that helped to ship the Division 2. They helped ship Division 1 as well. But again, it's like saying, okay, we got, ingredients from the same place. I'm just using a cooking analogy. It might be a terrible one. Let me know in the comment section if you think it is. But again, even though you have those similarities, you have some of those things together. I think Frederick Thailander I think he was probably in charge of, dealing with some of the weapon sound changes and all that stuff. Maybe he wasn't. But, one of the big things when Division 2 came out, and I thought it was a pet peeve for me, was the weapon sound changes from familiar weapons that we knew. But again, like I said, they probably wanted to keep things fresh. So as much as it really necessarily doesn't appeal to a lot of Division 1 players, it's not necessarily that their opinions about the Division 2 is canon. If anything, it shows that the game went such a different direction and it lost its old player base. Now, yes, I think that is the major concern that we can actually say, okay, we can harp on that the main player base, the OG player base did not necessarily get the feel from the old game, but it does not mean that the Division 2 is not a good game. That's hard to say, because a lot of Division 2 agents will tell you, a lot of Division 1 former agents will tell you, I just don't feel like Division 2 really does appeal to me like the Division 1 did. And that's heavily understandable. Like I said, 2 different chefs making the same dish, you're bound to see the differences. And if you maybe enjoyed the meal made by the first chef, it's possible that the meal made by the second chef, even though it may be a similar meal or the same meal, may not necessarily appeal to you because it's different hands. But I'll get off this video right now. I mean, I think you guys kind of get what I'm saying. It's really run its course too long. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And even before I get the one comment saying I'm giving excuses for the developers, I'm probably just going to pin it for you if you make the comment or whatever it is. I'm just saying from my own perspective that I believe that this may be the fundamental divide that's making a lot of people kind of feel that way, if there's any. Talk to you guys in another video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.